morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Maria Tranquilli, and I'm a program manager at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. For those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center is a nonprofit dedicated to enabling entrepreneurs from all over the world to realize their maximum potentials and grow. We will open up for live Q&A at the end of this event. Please submit your questions in the chat function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. None of what we do would be possible without all of the amazing support from our sponsors. We're humbled and grateful for their contributions. And during these unique times, we are curious how sentiment is among the entrepreneurs in our NASDAQ community. We would like to start by taking a poll to let us know how you are feeling about your business right now. How are you currently feeling? Fearful, anxious? Are you surviving? Are you optimistic? Please take a few moments to fill out this poll. Thank you all. It looks like everyone feels as though they're surviving currently. Our next poll, what type of entrepreneur are you? Are you an entrepreneur currently in business? Are you an aspiring entrepreneur? Or maybe you have another position in your company. Thank you all. It looks like we have entrepreneurs and some other positions in the company attending today. And finally, we are wondering, what is keeping you up at night? Is it finance, sales, marketing, or scaling your business, pivoting your business, your team, or survival? It looks like pivoting is the top answer here. Thank you all so much for sharing. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming our speaker today, Jamie Greenwood. Jamie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I am so thrilled to be here for number 2 of 4, our 4-part series on adaptive resilience for leaders in an ever-changing world. And today we are diving into how do we find calm in the middle of chaos, which, whether you are an entrepreneur, an aspiring entrepreneur, dealing with the team, dealing with kids, partner, friends, family, this is a necessary skill and a necessary skill set. And part of what we're going to talk about today in terms of finding calm in the middle of chaos is how we transform inner stress to outer presence for greater dignity, confidence, and personal power. And when I say power, it's really important for me to say we're not talking about power over, like you having more power over people, but more power with, power between, sharing of power, power connection. And that comes from feeling centered and aligned in your own system. Also, today is going to be a little bit different. Last session, we saved questions to the end. And this time, it's going to be more of a conversation. So I'm going to be asking questions throughout, and you can either answer them in the chat box for everybody, or there will be a moment where everyone will have the option to unmute themselves and then ask a live question. So that'll be fun. Where I want to start is just, I know that NASDAQ just kind of took a poll of like, how are you feeling in this moment as an entrepreneur? And my question to you right now is just, as a human being on this planet in your body right now? What is your mood? What is your mood right now? And you can, this please just type into the chat box and I'll read it off, because when we're thinking about going from a state of chaos to a state of calm, we have to first recognize where we are. You know, to change a state, we have to recognize the state we are in. And that's what we're doing with this question. What state are you in right now? And you can just put them into the chat box and I will read them off. All right. I see challenged. I would say my mood is both excited, thrilled to be here, and nervous that a child might bust in on us. Even though the door is locked, they somehow have learned like to pick locks. So I'm holding both of those things: excitement, happiness to be here, and also like a little bit of anxiety. Yeah, someone just wrote anxious. What else? What else are some of the moods that we're all being asked to sit with today? Because again, once we can name and be with, and this is what we talked about last week. If you were with us, we were talking about what resilience is and what resilience isn't. And so much of what resilience is learning how to be with what is here. And then the second piece of that is what we're diving into today. Once we can be with what is here, how do we change what's here? How do we change our states? Okay. If anyone else feels like sharing their mood, feel free to do so in the chat box as we go along. And I want to just have you think now, when you think about a stressful situation, let's say, you know, something blows up at work, there are a number of ways in which we can experience stress, right? There is the stress of, you know, stress with someone, being in conflict with someone. And then there is the stress of, you know, 10 things just get dumped on your work plate. And now you're struggling to figure out what to prioritize, right? So I want you to just pull up an instance of stress that, let's say, happened recently. Maybe it happened 3 minutes ago. And how did you respond to that stress? How did you respond to that stress? What kind of happened in your body and in your system, and how did you respond to that? And as you're thinking about that, I now want you to think about, there is the response that you gave, and how would you have liked to respond? You know, maybe the response you gave to this stress was the ideal response, and you're like, I loved how I responded. But most often, how we respond to immediate stressors, if we haven't first connected to our state and then changed our state, is a reaction that generally either doesn't go over well to the person receiving it, harms us in some way, whether it fuels our anxiety or our overwhelm, or leads us, and this is a popular one for me, is leading to an apology, right? You have a react, like something gets thrown on your plate or someone says something and you react. And in the moment you feel completely justified. And then you take a breath and you realize, I might have to apologize for that. This is one, I said like, this is the one that I work with a lot, but also one that I think is very, very familiar to my clients that are either entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs or business owners, where there is so much on your plate that you might even be in a reaction state 70% of your day, right? You might be constantly reacting because of how much is being thrown at you. And with that, we're going to be talking about, in the middle of that chaos, how do we realign? How do we find center? And when I say find center, what that really means is, how do we change our state from where we are to a state of centeredness? Because so often what I hear from my clients is that when I use this language of like finding center, in the beginning, they're like, like, I don't know where center is. Is it under a rock? Like, where is center? Because I don't seem to have one. and so and so I just want to say that too, that if I'm using language that your reaction is like, I have no idea what you're saying to me, um I'll work on rewording, because it's less about finding center and more about cultivating center, right? It's more that we all have one, and often there are lots of layers on top of it. Lots of things have been papered over our center and our state of calm. So we're going to get into how we begin to find that. And as we do, I want to move into kind of responses and the ways in which we react or respond to situations. And some of the language I'm going to be using might be familiar to some of you. It might be new. It might be familiar, or it might be brand new. So just kind of sit with it as it comes. So often when there is incoming information that elicits a response from us, to use a popular word, maybe a trigger, something comes in and you are triggered by it. We go into conditioned tendencies, right? Or knee-jerk reactions. Either way, same thing, a conditioned tendency, a knee-jerk reaction. And those tend to be fight, flight, freeze, or appease. And I'll get into what those all are. So fight, we know it's right. Something happens and our immediate response is to go towards, and to fight. Flight is, this is uncomfortable. I am leaving now. That is flight. And there are many ways in which we fly away. It may not just be physical, whether that means, for some of us, flight may look like leaving the room. It may look like ending the conversation. But for some of us, flight can be just numbing out. Often when I talk to clients about numbing agents, those are the clients that, we all numb, but those that numb frequently and often tend to also be people who lean towards flight. They lean towards just get me out of here. I just don't want to be here anymore. So what takes you away? And that'll be a question I'll ask in a second too, of like, if you are a flight person, what is your form of flight? And if flight looks like numbing, how do you numb? What are your forms of numbing? Then there is freeze. Like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to move. And then maybe this will all just go away. And then there's appease. And this is fawning. This is appeasement. This is something comes at you. And instead of taking a moment, checking in and saying, you know what, I can't do this for you in this moment. You're like, oh, sure, anything you need. Right? Okay, great. Or someone's angry at you and you immediately begin to apologize. Whatever you can do to soften the edges, that's appeasement. Now, there is nothing wrong with any of these. The important thing to know is that our conditioned tendencies or our knee-jerk reactions, they are important. They have use. They have served us for so long and actually will continue to serve us. There are times in which the only answer is fight, or the only answer is flight, or the only answer is appeasement, because to not appease might even be unsafe, right? So I'm not talking about these instances where the conditioned tendency is the 100% right response. I'm talking about now when we are reacting with conditioned tendencies, when there actually could be a more nuanced response, right? Where there could be more space given, right? More time given so that we can respond in a way that benefits everybody, right? Because often with fight, we benefit. If we are doing any of these conditioned tendencies, it's all from a place of what is benefiting me, which makes sense, right? Because conditioned tendencies are protective mechanisms. They are protective of you. That's wonderful. That's their job. And when we are thinking about ourselves as managers, as leaders, as entrepreneurs, it's important to not lose ourselves, but it's also important to remember that we are now in charge of a lot of other things, a lot of other people, and creating connection. And often connection is, it's very hard to make a connection when we are in our conditioned tendency. Because when we are in a conditioned tendency, a tendency that is about protection, with that tendency also comes a shutdown. Almost like if you think about, and we're going to do this in an exercise, what the physical experience of your conditioned tendency is, often it is like a musculature shutdown. Things just get real tight, right? And from that tight place, it's really hard to find connection, to find compassion. It's hard to hear anything in that locked down space, right? Which one of these conditioned tendencies do you lean towards? And I'd love to hear the answers in the chat box. You can just write, here, I'm going to write down what your options are in case you want to know. Fight, flight, freeze, or appease. Freeze. Someone just wrote, I freeze. Yeah. What else? What are some other ones? Also, please know that you may do all of these. You may do a combo of two. Your conditioned tendencies may change depending on who you're with. Thank you. Ming just wrote, fight or flight with my husband, appease with everyone else, freeze with myself. Yes, exactly. That our conditioned tendencies often change depending on who we are engaging with. And this tendency to, maybe fight with an intimate partner, but then appease everyone you like kind of only peripherally know. It's like we can have our intimate part, like we can get into it with our intimate partner, but like heaven forbid someone we don't know doesn't like us. So let's just like make sure that everyone who doesn't know us stays happy. Yeah, someone just wrote primarily flight and appease. And for those of you, who are I hope that you're all thinking about this, what does fight, flight, freeze, or appease look like in action for you? So fight may not be like going to blows. It might look like sending off a really aggressive email, right? Fight might look like getting immediately defensive. Flight, as we talked about, can look like numbing, right? So maybe it could look like food for some people. For a lot of my clients, it looks like food or alcohol or sleep, right? Just like, this isn't happening, I'm going to bed. Or the opposite, completely immersing yourself in work. That is a form of numbing when we aren't checked in with ourselves. Yeah, someone just wrote fight and then flight. Yeah, just like get a quick 1-2 in there and then you're out. Freeze, what does freeze look like? One of the things I've seen a lot is that freeze can actually be one of the ways in which we can kind of mask freeze into what we would think is like a good habit is just being very quiet. Like, no, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm going to let this person just do what they need to do, and I'm just going to sit here. And we might think that that's being present, but if we aren't open to what the person is saying, that's actually a freeze response. We're just frozen. We're just being real quiet until it blows over. Right. And so if you lean towards freeze, being honest with yourself of like, am I frozen and not responding in this conversation? Or am I actually relaxed and open and listening to what's coming, to what's coming towards me? Sarah just wrote, my mind literally goes blank. Yes. Yeah. And I can't think of what to say. And it's annoying because I feel stupid. Yeah. Thank you for naming that, Sarah, because well, here's the thing. We live in a culture, and I say that for those of the people who live in the United States, it's a familiar thing in American culture to think that you always have to have the right answer, and to be quick, to be very quick with that answer. We give no respect to taking a moment, to taking a beat, to taking time. And what Sarah's naming is, I really wonder what would happen if in that moment of blankness, there was breath. There just was breath and an allowance for the blankness, and then to see how quickly your words might come back to you. Because what's happening in that moment of freeze is that your mind goes blank, and then you're ashamed that your mind went blank, and then you're ashamed that you can't find the language. And it's just this piling on of anxiety, fear, and shame, which we can't respond in any intellectual or thoughtful way when we are under layers of shame. Right? Yeah. Freeze for me is a complex sandstorm in my mind. Yeah. And even the language, thank you for that word, sandstorm. Like it's just, even though you're frozen, there's a lot going on, right? You may be frozen on the outside, but on the inside, because you are in a stress response, there's a lot going on physiologically. If anyone else wants to share what their conditioned tendency or their knee-jerk reaction is and what it looks like in practice, right? And then appease. What does appease look like to you? I'll say that for me, appeasement looks like humor. Like if someone is angry at me, I just will like attempt to be as funny as I possibly can. So this person will hopefully get happy. It usually doesn't work, because if a person's a place of anger and you just throw humor at them, it just like bounces right off. But it's also an appeasement for myself, because I'm experiencing incredible discomfort, right? Like if I check in with myself, I'm experiencing so much discomfort at this person's anger towards me that I am both, I'm flying away. I'm like, I don't want to feel this discomfort. And then I'm also appeasing them, or attempting to, with humor. So for those of you who appease, what does it look like? What does appeasement look like? And also tracking the combos, right? Someone wrote, I fight and then I fly, right? Knowing that combos are very, very popular. Freeze and flight, appease and flight. A lot of just like, let me do one and then get the hell out of here. Right. Yes, sometimes when I appease, I get really smiley and happy. Yeah, and again, I feel stupid, right? Because you're like, yeah, why am I doing this weird thing? Again, because we are in distress and we're doing something that in the past has worked for us to get us out of this distress. Appeasement is total fawning for me. Also, like holding a ridiculous amount of space for whoever's upset with you. Just like, yes, that's right. You're angry at me. Let it all come at me. It's okay. Being, and we also mask this as like, I'm, what's the word I want to use here? like I'm a bigger person. I'm the bigger person that can hold all of your anger. It's like, actually, no, that's appeasement. And that's a way in which you are hiding from your feelings of discomfort in the face of someone else's discomfort. I want to just share one more thing that someone wrote, which was apologizing and blaming whatever it is on myself so people don't take offense. Yeah, just taking all the blame. That's a beautiful example of appeasement. And if you are someone that can handle a lot of blame, that's a great out for you. Because it almost, when you're used to taking all the blame, you don't even like really let it sink in. You're just like, sure, I'll take that. Just put that back there. It's like not even a big deal. Whereas someone else who might have a fight response, the idea of taking on blame is utterly preposterous, right? It's like, that's not mine, that's yours, right? So what I want to do now, and thank you for everyone who is sharing, and even for those of you who are just kind of sitting with what I'm saying, just beginning to feel what your conditioned tendency is. And again, not from a place of like, okay, I found the thing that is wrong with me, but more, I've found the way in which I respond to stress. Okay, that makes sense. Another question to sit with is, where did this come from? So much of our fight, flight, freeze, and appease responses are both cultural and familial. What was allowed in the place that you were growing up and with the people you were growing up with? For some people, fight was allowed. Like fight was the way you got things done. And in other homes, it was like, nope, let's just check out. Let's all just, there might be a big disconnect or a big fight, and then no one would talk about it. Right? That's like a combination of like fight, flight, and freeze. that's just all those. Or appease. If there was someone in your family constellation growing up that had lots of feelings, and then everyone around that person felt, or you learned that everyone's job in the family was to appease that one person, right? It would make perfect sense that that is now what is being rehashed and redone and popping up in your life. So if we know that these conditioned tendencies aren't wrong and do have use and truly have benefited us in the past, why are we even having a conversation about changing them? And the reason why we're having a conversation about changing them is that they don't offer a lot of options in terms of hearing the other side, in terms of connection with yourself, and in terms of connection with other people, which we have to have if we are in business, if we are building businesses, if we are in connection with any other human on the face of the planet. We have to be able to move from a conditioned tendency to a more centered place so that we can see more clearly. Right? This is all just about being able to kind of move from that tiny little granular locked in place to a softened, more like bird's eye view place, to a place of vision, really, which is what so many entrepreneurs really pride in themselves, right? Our vision, what we can see, what we want to create, what we want to be a part of. So what we're gonna do now is a centering practice. So this is a practice that I use a lot, both in my private coaching work, also in my group work, and then also in my corporate work. And it's an incredible tool to employ when you feel a conditioned tendency arise. So what we're going to do is I want you to close your eyes, and you can place some hands on your body. It's always nice to receive some touch when you are about to go into a centering practice. It reminds us of like, oh, here I am, right? Moving from our head down into our physical body. So you can place a hand on your heart or hand on your belly, maybe palms up on your knees, like in an open receiving position. And I want to start by just pulling up an instance most recently where you experienced a stress response. Maybe your kids interrupted a Zoom meeting you were on, or someone threw you a project that you believed was theirs to do. You have an employee that you're finding it difficult to work with. What is something stressful that has recently happened? Nothing too intense or too stressful, but a stressor that elicited a conditioned tendency response in you. And now in pulling up that experience, I want you to start taking some big, deep breaths in, breathing in and breathing out. And breathing in, expanding. Breathing out, grounding. I want you to begin to notice which conditioned tendency you experienced in that moment. Was it fight, flight, freeze, or appease, or a combination? And what does that conditioned tendency feel like in your body? And just begin to track. What does fight feel like in your body? Where does it live in your body? Or flight? What does freeze feel like in your body, and where does it live? Or maybe appeasement. And noticing where it lives, noticing if there's a tightness, a tension, heaviness. What's the temperature in your body around this conditioned tendency? Maybe there's some heat or some cool. Just noticing. And from this place of just noticing the conditioned tendency, what it feels like in your body to experience it and where it lives, I want you to start taking some big, long, deep breaths into the length of your body. Right? Start taking breath in from the entire length of your body, breathing up from your feet all the way up your body to the top of your head. And then breathing back down. Breathing into length as if you're stretching into your full capacity. Not overstretching, but really just inhabiting the fullness of your length. And as you do that, also bringing in dignity. To be in our full length is also to be in our full dignity. And taking another big deep breath in. And on this one, expanding out side to side into your full width. Maybe you shake your hips a little. Maybe you feel your arms spread out and taking up your full width. I like thinking about it as like all the rings on a tree kind of stretching out and taking up their full space. And as we inhabit our full width, connecting the community that is on either side of us. Breathing into the community that you have and that's here right now. And taking another big deep breath in and moving to your depth, the front side and the back side of you, taking up the full space of your complete depth. Begin to feel into your back, becoming aware of who has your back. All that you've learned in the past, the ancestors that have come before you, all at your back, there for you. And on your next inhale, going from that back to your front, to the place of forward motion, of what you care about that you are moving towards. Breathing into that front, allowing space to honor what is here, what is coming, what you care about, and what you want to create. And taking another big deep breath and integrating all pieces, our length and our dignity, our width and our community, our depth, our ancestors, our past, our present, and where we want to go. Allowing this feeling of full centeredness to track over your entire body. Feeling into this. And now when you're ready, see what's happened to that conditioned tendency response. How has your state shifted? And what would a reaction look like from this place? When you're ready, you can open your eyes. So that is called a centering practice, where we breathe into length, width, and depth. And that was a long version of that. But this is actually something that I employ and I ask my clients to employ before the moment that they feel the conditioned tendency, to breathe into it, to allow it to be there, and then to offer it length, depth, and width, and to see what happens. So that's what I want to know now. One, how are you feeling in your body, and how has your state shifted? What is different in this moment right now that maybe wasn't here in that moment where I asked you to pull up your conditioned tendency and feel that fully in your body? What feels possible from this place of length, width, depth? Yeah, someone just wrote a greater sense of calm, right? And from this place, I can hear almost anything. It's kind of crazy. But, whereas before we might have been completely triggered, and in our triggering, unable to hear, unable to connect because we were so locked in to our conditioned tendency, from here, what's possible? And also, everyone, please know that now you're all muted, but now have the ability to unmute yourself. So if you would like to answer this question live with your amazing voice, you may do so. What seems possible from this place of centeredness? Someone wrote, I thought of the ancestors supporting my back. Felt like I wasn't walking around and refocusing on what's in front of me. Help me remember that I'm actively doing what I aim to do. Yeah, it's a focus. It's a reminder of focus. Authenticity to self. Yeah. You know what? And again, feel free to unmute yourself and share out loud what this centering practice offered you, what you experienced in your body before and after, and how might this be applicable in a triggered setting. Yes, thank you. Philippe wrote, aware of myself and focused with light mind. Yeah, I love that language. When we were locked down, it's tight and it's heavy. And with this, there's just space. There's just space. And it's a wonderful thing to practice, you know, whether in a situation where, you know, you might be a little frustrated, but not like fully inflamed. This is the place to start. We don't have to go to like fully inflamed. But it's also incredibly powerful to know that, you know, I also think that as entrepreneurs, you know, we're just doers. We're just doers, and we like to get stuff done, and we really like to be in charge. Or maybe that's just me. So, you know, and part of that piece of really liking to be in charge is understanding that we have the power to shift our state, but it doesn't come from forcing a shift. If you've noticed, that entire centering practice was about allowing yourself to have the conditioned tendency. You were allowed to have that feeling and have those sensations. And then the question is, what else is here and what else is possible? Versus, I'm having a conditioned response. I shouldn't be feeling this way. I want this to go away. And we know what that does, right? It goes back to what Sarah was saying. It's like, it just kind of, you feel stupid, you feel guilty, you feel ashamed. It just begins to compound. So very similar to our first conversation last week, the centering practice allows you to be with what is, while also offering what might be possible. Is there anything else that someone would like to share about this experience in your body? You know, and I said this last time, and I'll say it again. For those of us, somatic practices can be really easy, and we can very easily get into our bodies. And for some of us, the body may not be safe. It may not feel like it's a safe place to go. So proceed with care. Proceed, but proceed with care. Fully present is the key, Philippe wrote, to feel and act free and lovely. Yeah. So what I want to move on to from here, and again, if anything comes up for anyone, just you can put it in the chat box, or you can ask a question and unmute yourself, is that these conditioned tendencies remind us to take a moment. And this is going to be a huge, I mean, it really is kind of like a radical act for, as Sarah was saying, to feel like you have to have an automatic response, to feel like you have to have an immediate solution to a problem. And oftentimes we don't, especially if we are in a triggered response, or the solution that we offer isn't always the one that we want isn't always the one that is the most helpful for everybody present. So being brave and taking a moment, and even using the language of, I need a moment. Whether that is whether you are alone and having a triggered response, and so you offer that moment to yourself, or if you find yourself moving towards conflict, taking a breath and just saying, you know what? I think I need a minute to center because I want to be able to hear you fully. That's language I use a lot. I want to be able to hear you fully. So let me just breathe into my length and my dignity and my width and my community and my depth and my ancestors. It's like, let's just do that so that I can offer you what we both need. And the beautiful thing about becoming aware of your conditioned tendency, feeling it in your body, beginning to notice that you can move from one state to another based on breath and presence, is that you begin to notice other people's conditioned tendencies too. You begin to almost have this superpower of like, oh, I see that person. I see what they're going into. Okay, let me center so that I can be present in case they are not centered. And this is not, again, this is not hierarchical. This is not, I am better than because I am now centered. This is, what does everyone here need? What is best for all? And if you can be present with your conditioned tendency, be present with the discomfort of being with that, and then do this practice, you are offering the person in front of you another option, right? Because often when we're in a conditioned tendency, that gives permission for the other person to show their conditioned tendency. And then we're all just like back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And so what happens when someone just does a total left turn and does something unexpected, right? It changes the connection. It changes the relationship towards one of possibility, really, instead of disconnection and misunderstanding. All right, there was one other thing I wanted to say, which is that this is, and I'm going to be saying this a lot in the next two rounds. Everything I talk about is a practice. It's a lifetime practice, and it's something that I remind myself and my clients of every single day, because again, being in a solution-driven, quick kind of culture, there is a discomfort with the idea that we are always practicing, right? Almost like you're kind of always a student. We give a lot of lip service to like, I'm a lifelong learner. It's like, liar. You don't want to be a lifelong learner. You want to know everything. But the thing is that with this actually is a practice of lifelong learning, and there's different layers, right? We're just talking right now about the first layer. But once you can be present with the knee-jerk reaction, offer it space, center yourself, and then react from there. Offer yourself a centered reaction rather than a knee-jerk reaction. You will begin to see not only your entire system change, but the system of your life change. Like the system of your work change, the system of your relationships change, because everyone is forced to change once someone has the ability to offer space for themselves and everyone else. All right. And again, I'm just going to say it again. You're going to be triggered again and 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 again. And, if 1 out of 13 times you remember to breathe and make space, and you're like, oh God, I'm appeasing right now. Oh, I'm so appeasing right now. That's a win. That's a win. I'm like, oh, I'm flying. I have already flown out the door, right? And feeling what that sensation is like in your body, just the noticing is an incredible win. That's an incredible win. So we're not going for perfection here in any way. We're going for practice. Okay, let me just answer this question. And of course, please throw them into the chat box if you like, or, unmute yourself. Someone just wrote, are there podcasts or teachers you follow to remind yourself to continue the practice? My challenge is that I always go through phases of being very light, then dropping to heavy over a few days. And it's so hard to stay on course. So here's the thing. You never fall off course. There's only one course, right? It's like, I think about people talking about like dieting and like falling off the wagon. And when I talk to my clients about food, I'm like, there's no wagon. There's no wagon. There is nothing to fall off. This is just like one foot in front of the other. And so on some days, you're going to have lightness and you're going to be like, oh, this is it. This is what Jamie's talking about. I'm living the dream. And the next day you're like, I hate my work. I hate my family. I hate my life. Like, and then you like take a breath. You're like, oh, right. This is also part of the course that Jamie was talking about. Okay. And like, so that's what I would say is if we can remove the idea of there's only one path and we have to stay on that path and we're either on it or off of it, we can let that go. We free ourselves. The second part to your question, I love, and I'm going to write her name in the chat box. There's an incredible meditation instructor named Tara Brach. Tara Brach is absolutely wonderful. I love her stuff. And she has a ton of meditations on her free meditations on her website. There are a few others that I'm completely blanking now. Tara is the one that's like coming to my, Spring Washam. Let me put her name here. Spring Washam. Just start with 2. 2 is good. And they're both traditionally taught Buddhist meditation instructors who also bring a lot of insight and wit and humor and compassion to their work that I really value and learn a lot from. So those are my 2 go-tos. Are there any other questions before I hand this off to Maria? Know this, I'm very proud of you for being here. And for those of you who were here with us last week and are now here with us today, we have 2 more and I want to see you on all of them because I'm really not into like one-offs. If you follow me for like any time at all, I'm not into one-offs. I'm into like sustained relationships that build and grow over time, which is why we're doing 4 of these. So with that, thank you so much for being here. And there will be both more journaling questions and another meditation coming your way in the homework email or the follow-up email. So, okay, thank you. Maria, to you.
Jamie, thank you so much. This has been incredible. And I want to ask anyone and everyone who has not had the opportunity to provide Jamie with feedback, please click on the survey link that is in the chat. We would love to hear what is working for you. And we know that Jamie and her incredible work will be even better with your feedback. And Jamie, again, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to our community, to share your insights, and to set such a great overview and deep dive this week. On behalf of NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone in attendance today, we're sincerely grateful for you to join us. And everyone, as Jamie mentioned, we will be having 2 additional events, Thursday, August 6th and August 23rd, the final 2 in this series with Jamie. We would love for you to attend as well. You can register for that through the same link that you had used to register for this, and we will make sure in a follow-up email that you have access to that. And if any of you are entrepreneurs in business, we have a pricing strategy for startups up next week as well. Please join us if you're interested. So again, Jamie, we are so grateful for the time that you have spent with us today. It has been immense and very deepening. So Thank you again. We'll see everyone August 6th.